Hey there, everyone. That sexy nerd is back again, and we got more Cleopatra for you guys. Yeah, I kind of dropped off a little bit on this, but I'm back. Been really busy. Been really busy with with everything, and just had a lot on my plate. And hey, I'm just getting my videos out to you as quickly as I possibly can. Now we're gonna see more about what Cleopatra is, how she shapes Egypt and how she gets more with Mark Antony. And I feel like this will be. Is this the death? Is this when she dies? Maybe it is. I mean, I haven't seen the video yet, but let's just get into it. So please smash that like button if you want to see more sexy and nerdy content, and subscribe if you think I deserve it. And let's do this thing, y'all. Yeah, so it is death by snake.
Alexandria, fall 34 BCE. The city gathers at the gymnasium, watching the gold and silver stage. Seated on the lower level are 4 young people, Cleopatra's children with Caesar and Antony. They sit on golden thrones, with even the 2-year-old in royal attire. And on the top level, dressed as Isis and Osiris, sit Cleopatra and Antony. Antony, wearing a crown of ivy and a golden robe, stands and makes a series of proclamations. As Roman triumvir, Antony names Cleopatra the queen of not only Egypt, but of Cyprus, Libya, and Syria, and recognizes Caesarion as Caesar's son, and gives him the deified title King of Kings. Then he gifts an enormous amount of land to his children with Cleopatra, stating where each will rule, and the crowd roars with approval. After the ceremony, Antony sends his proclamations to Rome requesting senatorial approval, and then he and Cleopatra commission new coins to commemorate the event, which will be known as the Donations of Alexandria.
Wow.
The couple's purpose with this very public showing is to establish a new Mediterranean dynasty that will rule for centuries, though it would last only 5 years.
What sucks?
The Donations of Alexandria represented Antony and Cleopatra's crossing the Rubicon moment. After years of uneasy peace with Octavian, the couple was ready to lay their claim to the Mediterranean world. Antony's letter to the Senate represented not just a request for recognition, but really a pitch to the leaders of Rome. Hi, we're powerful, we're rich, and we've set up a line of succession that includes Caesar's own flesh and blood son. So, come on, ditch Octavian and come join us. The problem with this pitch, of course, was that he made it from Alexandria and not Rome. Because while Alexandria may have been where the best parties happened, Rome was definitely still the place for business. Plus, the Senate had a lot of problems with Antony and Cleopatra's proposition. From the Senate's perspective, it was Cleopatra who was calling the shots and had Antony under her spell. Why else would he treat his devoted Roman wife, Octavia, so poorly? Why else would he give so much territory, which included some Roman provinces, over to Egypt? Why else would he officially recognize Caesarion as Caesar's son, challenging the legitimacy of Octavian's inheritance? These Roman senators wanted a traditional Roman leader, not whatever this was. It was an opening which Octavian exploited masterfully. He marshaled an effective propaganda campaign back in Rome, targeted not at Antony, but Cleopatra. For despite the stories of Antony's extravagant life...
Because if that had been the case, that if they had gone... Yeah, I realize that now. If he had gone after Antony... It's ridiculous how race really does play a part in, pissing people off, It really does. Like, certain people today use it as well.
Lifestyle and misdeeds in the East, he'd been politically active longer than young Octavian and still had long-term supporters amongst the Senate. Plus, after experiencing a civil war with Caesar versus Pompey, and then another civil war after Caesar's assassination, Rome just wasn't up for another military campaign between 2 Roman leaders. But
this mistake is costing Amazon Prime shoppers big. Are you still using Prime? Because at this point...
But what about a war between Rome and a femme fatale Egyptian queen who practiced sorcery? Sounds great to us! Octavian's propaganda played up how Cleopatra seduced Antony, leading this once great Roman leader down a path of vice and self-destruction. And in this way, it was actually Octavian who was fighting to save Antony, not destroy a rival to Roman leadership. This wasn't a civil war. No! This was a rescue mission. Told you this Octavian guy was clever. This propaganda
He really
also
is
portrayed
clever.
Cleopatra using magic to steal the minds and hearts of Rome's greatest men. And Octavian pressed the idea that a victory for Egypt would most assuredly see Cleopatra and not Antony ruling Rome, and that the Roman people would be made to worship Egyptian gods.
Oh.
Events came to a head in 32 BCE. The official reign of the Antony and Octavian triumvirate was over, and it was now time to decide a new leadership structure. Hundreds of Roman senators left to join Antony in Egypt, while Octavian consolidated power in Rome. Antony also severed his last remaining connections to his rival, divorcing Octavia that spring. Octavian, however, learned that Antony had drawn up a controversial will and left the document at the Temple of Vesta. So he broke into the temple and seized it, and then read the document aloud to the remaining members of the Senate, though he didn't let anyone else read the will, which of course is only slightly suspicious.
Yeah, of course.
The will included further grants to Antony and Cleopatra's children, Caesarion, and a request that upon his death, Antony's body should be buried in Alexandria and not Rome. This document, real or not, left little doubt in Rome that Antony intended to turn Alexandria into the center of the empire. And based on that, the remaining members of the Senate gave Octavian permission to strip Antony of his official powers and raise an army to face Egypt. Meanwhile, Antony and Cleopatra traveled to Athens, where they collected their forces and also partied real hard while they waited for the final confrontation. September 2nd, 31 BCE, Actium, Greece. And we finally arrived at the final battle of the Roman Republic. Whoever wins here will go on to create an empire that will dominate the Mediterranean world for the next 4 centuries. In the western corner, we have Octavian, representing Rome, and if you listen to his propaganda, traditional Roman values. And in the eastern corner, we have Antony and Cleopatra, fighting for a hybrid style of Roman and Hellenistic traditions. Let's get ready to toga! The fate of the Mediterranean world is fittingly decided on the Mediterranean Sea. Octavian's forces are a collection of troops from Italy and Roman provinces, while Antony and Cleopatra's forces feature soldiers from Egypt, Asia Minor, Greece, and in a nod to Cleopatra's roots, Macedonia. And many of the couple's ships are outfitted with gold and silver, as though expecting a triumphal parade. Antony leads from the front line, while Cleopatra and her fleet are close behind, coiled like a snake, ready to strike at the enemy's weak spot. The pharaoh has insisted on joining the battle, for it's a battle that could see her family crowned rulers of the known world. Antony and Octavian's ships engage at close quarters, attempting to ram into each other. They come alongside, and a brutal hand-to-hand combat roils across decks. Then, Cleopatra's fleet rows forward, presumably to assist Antony's beleaguered forces. But as her fleet travels through the maelstrom, for reasons that remain obscure, and we'll definitely be discussing in our Lies episode, the Egyptian ships drop their sails and set off toward Egypt. Antony sees Cleopatra fleeing and directs his flagship to follow, while Octavian overtakes the remainder of Antony's fleet and destroys it. For the next year, Antony and Cleopatra will continue fighting Octavian's forces in Egypt, but Actium sealed their fate. The couple lost nearly all of their allies, and those that were left couldn't hold back the tide. For centuries, Roman generals had done the bidding of Ptolemaic leaders, invading Egypt, taking Alexandria, and restoring a monarch. Now Octavian entered Egypt to destroy the ancient dynasty once and for all. On August 1st, 30 BCE, Octavian's army overwhelmed Antony's remaining forces outside the capital. And as Octavian's troops marched into the city, Cleopatra fled to her partially constructed mausoleum and sealed herself inside, surrounded by her servants and personal treasure. Mentally shattered from fighting and hearing rumors that Cleopatra was dead, Mark Antony attempted suicide. But he failed to fall on his sword properly, which left him gravely wounded. And when Cleopatra learned what Antony had done, she immediately had him sent to her. But because servants had already sealed her in the mausoleum, Antony had to be lifted through a window before being brought to rest. And true to his nature, even at the last, he took a swig of wine and died in Cleopatra's arms. And amidst her anguish, Cleopatra was left to deal with this mess alone. Octavian had said that he desperately wanted Cleopatra to live because he wanted to maintain stability in Egypt, but she knew that was a lie. What he really wanted was to parade Cleopatra as a captive during his triumph in Rome. In fact, Cleopatra's own sister had been forced to march in such chains through Rome as part of Julius Caesar's triumph in 46 BCE. She'd been humiliated, screamed at, and demeaned. And traditionally, Roman prisoners of war were strangled at the end of such a walk, though that time Caesar had spared the woman's life. Would Cleopatra be so lucky?
No.
She'd spent her whole life besting Rome's leaders, and she wasn't about to let history remember her as a conquered woman. She returned to her palace under the gaze of Octavian's soldiers to plot her next move. And so, on August 12th, 30 BCE, as Octavian's soldiers stood watch over Cleopatra to prevent her from attempting suicide, the last pharaoh of Egypt put her final plan into motion. She convinced Octavian's guards to allow her back into the mausoleum to perform a ritual over Antony's body. Afterward, she bathed, dressed in her finest regalia, and had one last extravagant meal, during which she wrote a letter to Octavian telling him to bury her alongside Antony. She sent the letter and then called for dessert, a basket of figs. And upon its arrival, she opened the basket to reveal not only figs, but an asp placed there by an ally, which she quickly pressed to her arm and allowed it to strike. Her two ladies-in-waiting did the same. And by the time the guards realized what had happened, the three were already gone. The last pharaoh of Egypt was dead, but her story wouldn't die with her. So tune in next week as Cleopatra's immortality achievement gets officially unlocked.
I think that's what I'm going to do, actually, because now they brought up the lies video. I probably should have watched the lies video for the Great Northern War as well, but man, I'm really interested to see like what else there could be to learn about all this. So, yeah, we all know what happens next. We all know that everything is going to happen, but I want to see how Cleopatra's story is taught is taught through the ages. So join me for the next video. So please smash that like button if you want to see more sexy and nerdy content, and subscribe if you think I deserve it. And I'll see you all in the next video.